This is SciByte, episode 79 for January 29th, 2013. And welcome to SciByte, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science show, live Tuesday evenings over at jblive.tv and fresh for download Wednesday mornings over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every week is our host, Heather. Hey there, Heather.
Hey there, Chris.
Hey, Heather. Happy science to you.
Happy science.
So what are we talking about in this week's episode?
We're going to take a look at multitasking abilities, red pens, tractor beams, bicycle airbags, tracking Twitter, spacecraft updates, viewer feedback, curiosity news, and as always, take a peek back into history and up in the sky this week.
Holy smolies, that is a big show. Why don't we start then with that multitasking story with the news? Because I have a feeling I'm not going to like it. I guess our first story is the multitasking story. Am I right?
It is. You are correct. Your multitasking ability is proficient.
All right, so tell me about this.
All right. So obviously people believe they have, they multitask efficiently.
Right.
But a new study is actually indicating the people who multitask the most, like talking on your cell phone while driving, are actually the least capable of doing so.
Wow, really? So how does that work? Because it seems like it'd be like if you do it a lot, maybe you become, it's like exercise or training.
Yeah. Well, there was a study. It had like a little over 300 undergrads, basically split between females and males around the age of 21. And they, got a course credit for volunteering for this project. They put them through a whole battery of tests. They had like a mock, almost like a driver's ed class. So you had a little car and you had to text while doing stuff. Or another one was you had to do what's called an operation scan, which is like memorization and math computation all at the same time. So you have to have numbers and letters and you have to string them all together.
Oh, okay. So
answer all of these in a string. Is 2 plus 4 6? G. Is 3 minus 2 2? A. Is 4 times 3 12? And you're supposed to be able to spit out true, G, false, A, true. And this is kind of testing your ability to how well you can all do these multitasking abilities.
Huh.
But the people who were actually do it weren't doing it so much because they have the ability, but the fact that they're less able to block out distractions and focus on a single task.
Ah, okay.
So by doing that, they're not really focusing on any one thing. And in fact, there's some theory that you're overconfident. I think 70% of the people in the study said, I'm definitely above average in multitasking abilities.
Right.
And obviously that's not going to happen. So
it's kind of like everybody always says, man, everybody else just drives so bad in the rain.
Yeah.
It's never you, of course, that drives bad in the rain. Never.
Oh, no. Never. No. Like that.
Well,
like that'll
interesting
happen.
Because I'm definitely sure that's where my multitasking comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Is just, not tuning things out. And to that end, like when I edit, I generally am very focused. And to the extent of where I sometimes won't hear something or, I will have multiple things playing at once, but I only hear the one thing that I'm...
Yes.
Yeah, so it kind of depends, varies from task. But I know, the whole reason I ever thought I could do shows and switch the camera myself at the same time while I'm pulling up web pages and holding a conversation with my co-host is because of multitasking. But it's probably because I'm thinking of those things anyways. I've been thinking, we should probably be showing this. We probably want to talk about this next. So since I'm already thinking about those things, I do them. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it doesn't mean that nobody is particularly, it doesn't mean you can't be good at multitasking, but it means that since so many people think they're awesome at it, that there's, if I think I'm awesome at multitasking, then yeah, sure. Why don't I talk on the phone in the car? It's not a big deal.
I'm awesome.
So I'm awesome. So if you're overestimating your ability, maybe you're doing it too much. You're surpassing your actual ability.
Huh. How do you know?
it's kind of interesting. I mean, there's these specific tests, but generally on the whole, they said that people who didn't multitask, like while they were driving or things, were actually the best.
Sure. Well, yeah, whenever you dedicate yourself to something.
Yeah. But I'm kind of with you. I'm like, multitasking? Actually, I thought, yeah, I'm good at it. And then they're like, well, actually, it's the inability to focus on one thing and doing a whole bunch of different stuff. And I was like, that's what makes me good at my job.
Yep.
Is thinking about all sorts of crazy stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And when I'm actually programming, I have like a bit of music in one ear that nobody else, I can't hear anybody else in the office.
Right. Yeah. Big time.
My boss is always wandering around talking on the phone or giving some interview. And, new people come onto my job. They're like, how do you tone that out? Tone what out? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that. Yeah.
What's rough for me is sometimes I go into offices where they have real liberal use of the intercom system through the phones. Oh. And so you get these really loud, blah, 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 blah. And it's like,
yes,
okay, I'm trying to
jarring.
focus. Yeah, it is. Or the places where when the front phone rings, after a ring or two, everybody's phone rings. That's really distracting too.
Oh, goodness,
especially
yes.
If they have high call volume. And all those things, I have really kind of built myself a little cave that I can stick myself into focus.
Yeah. I mean, in college, I couldn't do my homework if there was no one else in the room. I had to have the TV on low or the radio on low in order to use that as a white noise for myself.
Yeah. I think that's pretty. I think the white noise thing's pretty common.
Yeah. Well, I always blamed it on the fact that I had two little brothers.
You need some activity going on.
Something has to be background because if there's silence, it means something's about to happen.
Right. There could be monsters in that silence.
But this whole thing is all about, so mostly they're like, well, people who are most likely to talk in the cell phones, you probably shouldn't. But obviously there are a lot of jobs who are on the road that require you to do something. Or you feel like you need to do something because otherwise it's pull off the road, handle a client, get back on the road.
Yeah.
But
and it's tough when you're stuck in traffic for 2 hours. It's tough not to jump on the phone.
Yeah. And I mean, of all the participants, about 13, most of them spent about 13% of their driving time talking on the cell phone.
Huh.
So,
I actually don't like talking on the phone and driving.
No, neither do I.
I prefer the downtime. It's nice to have some peace and quiet.
Yeah. But it's funny because that actually matches up. There's some, federal estimates that 1 in 10 drivers are on the phone at any given time.
Oh, I believe that for sure.
And
that
matches right up. Oh, yeah, that matches pretty much right up what they thought of.
Oh, interesting.
But it's the whole idea that maybe you're just taking consideration you may not be, you're slightly less awesome than you think you may be.
Yeah. Do a little self-audit when you're doing it. Yeah.
Roll it on the safe side.
You always know the guy. You always know the guy too, because he's driving down the freeway, he's yakking his face off, and he's been driving for 10 minutes with the blinker on.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you were fully paying attention, you would realize right now that light is flashing on your dashboard, and maybe making a clicking, some sort of noise or something.
Yeah. Well, I think it's even scarier when they forget the kindergarten rules of coloring inside the lines. There are specific rules you learn in kindergarten. Color inside the lines.
Maybe they're just drunk, Heather. Give them a break. They could just be drunk.
I don't like that answer either.
Oh.
Still, color inside the lines.
Yeah, you drunks. All right, well, any other thoughts on that one?
No, it's just, wait, what was that? I'm not focusing on one thing.
All right, well, let's take a break here because Heather has a great pick for us this week. And,
yes.
I've picked some Star Wars books, but I think you've picked a real doozy here. Tell me about this one.
Yeah, this one happens directly after Return of the Jedi. I mean,
I love that.
Hours after. Darth Vader's, funeral pyre is still flaming up. And, there's some exterior alien force that comes in and they have to go. Leia's like, oh, sweet, diplomatic action. Let me go. And in the meantime, Obi-Wan Kenobi appears to Luke and says, yeah, you should get over there too, right now. So he's going into kind of this whole idea of now the universe, there hasn't been a Jedi in 20 years. And And so now everyone goes, huh, Jedi shows up out of nowhere, kills the Emperor, kills Darth Vader, helps the Republic take down the Empire altogether. Let's hope he doesn't come here. So this planet is sort of an Imperial-controlled planet.
Huh.
And I think, what was it? I was told he had a little bit of maybe sexual tension with the mayor or leader of this planet. But, he's kind of bringing together of what everything means now that he's like the first Jedi back. Everyone's kind of giving him this kind of respect, like, let's not mess with him.
What I love about it, I really love the idea that it picks up right after the last movie there, And so it's Star Wars, The Truce at Bakura?
Yeah,
all right.
Bakura.
And here, I'll just play a quick sample of it because, I want to give you guys an example. The Audible books that we recommend when they're these Star Wars ones are just fantastic.
I've got to keep these two crystals apart. It's a self-destruct of some sort.
Crystals?
Electrite crystal leads. The mechanism's trying to push them together. Let them touch. Poof. The whole fusion engine.
Tumbling slowly above the blue glimmer of Endor, Luke spotted Wedge's X-Wing. Alongside it drifted a 9-meter-long cylinder bearing Imperial markings, fully as long as the X-Wing and almost all engine, a type of drone ship the Alliance still couldn't afford.
You can hear the production quality, and this one I actually kind of like. It's 3 hours and 2 minutes. Now, some Audible books are, way longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
I have a series of books that's like 22 hours long. But 3 hours is actually great for that kind of thing because you can jump in, see if you like it, you get the high production value, and it's also, for me, it's like it's kind of like a popcorn book. Like, I'm really into some heavy stuff. I take a break with this, and what's great is if you use the link that we'll have in our show notes. Now, you do have to use the link to get this, but if you're a first-time Audible customer, you can actually get that book for free by using our affiliate link. And you get to keep it if you cancel the Audible membership. I'm an Audible Gold member. I get 2 books a month, and I just put that in my wish list, Heather, so thank you.
Awesome.
I'll be picking that one up. I want to give a quick plug just before we get out of here. If you're a gamer, or you do even like a little Minecrafting or something like that, go to jbgame.tv and join the Google Plus gaming community over there, folks, and tell them what kind of games you want to play. And they're organizing a community. It's just the very beginnings of a community organization, and they're working on getting like official Jupiter Broadcasting game servers and getting the TeamSpeak stuff all figured out. Which we have all of that stuff, but they're kind of organizing it all around a few games and things like that. So if anybody out there might like to participate in that, go to jbgame.tv. All right, Heather. Well, then let's move on to the news bite. Ba-ba-da-bum. What is our first story in the news bite?
Is this one of those times where science catches up to the stuff we kind of already know? So sociologists claim they've published a paper that says when teachers use a red pen to add comments, you perceive it more negatively than if they used any other color pen.
First of all, hilarious, somebody actually did a study on this.
Yes.
Second of all, I do agree.
Yes. It's like, gee, yeah. Well, it's one of those times where scientists, they go, that's true. I always felt like this. Let's make a study.
Well, red pops, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I mean, if you want to get really gross, it's also the color of blood.
Yeah, well, whatever the reason, they actually had 2 researchers. They got almost 200 undergraduate students given 4 versions of a already graded essay by some unknown instructor. So it's like, this is a graded paper from unknown teacher. And you had to deem the marks. Are they high quality? Are they low quality? And, give your feeling about what you feel like the professor was talking about. So some were written in red, others were written in blue. And what did how they felt about what the instructor had written, suggest what grade they would have given the essay, and how they felt about what was written. Now, when they'd finished the whole thing, each person was given a questionnaire to kind of figure out, some more concrete data.
Yeah. And
the student volunteers, they didn't seem to be impacted by agreeing with the comments, blue versus red.
Okay.
But when they disagreed, it was much different. When they, for the most part, they agreed. But when they did disagree, it was far different. It was so mainly negative.
So, like, they almost took it as, like, how we take caps on the internet. Like, the teacher was really, like, criticizing.
Oh, yes, exactly so. That just the things written were harsh. It's like doctor with a terrible bedside manner. It's the truth. It's the truth no matter what you say, but it's how you say it. And just so it was kind of that kind of theory. Maybe they should. Red pens may be a little abused. Maybe written a little too much.
Oh, come on. I say you gotta give people a little sting from time to time. Say, no, you got that wrong.
Yeah. But these researchers are going, well, maybe teachers should think about blue every once in a while too, or some other color.
So, so they did all this research, but they didn't quite zero in on why red provokes that reaction?
See, why would be a very different study.
Right. No, I understand.
First,
sure.
First you have to prove that, it tends towards that direction. That yes, yes, there is a correlation that red markers mean you think the teacher is more angry at you or thinks down upon you even more. Now they think that. Now they might do another study that says why. And with that, they'd have to do, fMRIs, functioning MRIs when they look at your brain while you're reading this stuff, or talk about exactly how you're feeling about various things. And there's so many different factors that would come into that.
Yeah. Well,
so
maybe they'll do one now that they've done this study.
Maybe they will. So don't feel bad when everyone obviously knows that when the teacher puts a little frowny face on your paper, you're really sad.
Now you can say there's some science to it.
Yep, there's science to how
maybe that'll make people feel better.
Yeah.
Now, about once every other week, you have to come on the show and tell me about how Star Trek has once again been being proven right by modern day science. Now, is this another one of those occasions?
Sort of, yes.
Okay.
So, yes, people, Star Trek, you may have heard it in the science news, tractor beams.
Yeah, that was a big one. It got a lot of attention last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but don't get all excited. This isn't anything more than, like little blood cell size stuff.
Okay. All right. Okay. We got to start somewhere, Heather.
Yeah. So light manipulation techniques have existed since the 1970s. The whole idea is that, but this is because light draws things away. This is the first time that light has been used to pull them, although at a microscopic level.
So the light particle is like dragging something along?
Yes. Now, generally, we've seen things for a long time that says normal light and matter interact with something by pushing away. Just the photons themselves have a radiation force. Like on comets. There's a picture in the show notes that says sometimes you see two tails off a comet. One is like all the dust. Kids walking along the carpet, all sorts of, with a cookie, there's cookie crumbs falling behind him. That's the dust. But there's another tail, and that's pointing straight away from the sun. So...
Oh, and they think the sun's light is pushing it that way.
Yeah, the photons itself push that to in a specific direction. So you've got the dust trail about where it's been, and then you have this other tail that says this is where the sun's photons have pushed it away. So that's generally how things work. Is you could use a laser or a light to push things around because of that force.
Is this maybe how this is how a solar cell works too?
Yeah, but in this case, they're being able to negate that force or put it in a negative direction. So they've switched it so that now that light is pulling matter to it.
That seems pretty impressive.
Yeah, and in fact, they're being able to dial in the size object that they can pull in.
Ooh.
So they'll dial it in so that a specific size, cells go to it. Or if you put it in a different dial, then different size. So being able to specifically dial into a specific size of cell, which right now there's a lot of things in the biomedical applications they're being seen right away. Let's say maybe you could pull off specific cells out of a blood sample and let you count things a lot better. So you can say, dial it into the specific size of what you want, pull them all away, then count what's of that size out of a whole blood sample.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's really a lot of what they're going for right now. Of course, also they've seen that things held by this, tractor beam force field, as I put my fingers in quotes in the air that you cannot see.
Okay.
they sort of rearrange themselves to form a structure that actually makes the beam even stronger.
Whoa.
So the objects themselves that are being tracked or being in are sort of used as a magnifying glass to pull more stuff in.
Huh. That's interesting. Heather, it's going to happen. You combine that with warp drive, we got ourselves the beginnings of a good star fleet.
Yep. So far, only for microorganisms.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
But yeah. So they get the head start.
Actually, it sounds like what they're actually maybe building is the annular confinement beam to the transporter. Because, the annular confinement beam is what keeps all of the particles in one consistent spot as they are transported from the ship to the surface and back up.
Ah.
So, when you come on the show and tell me they're working on annular confinement beams, I'm going to be excited.
Okay.
All right, I called it. Just by the way, I called it.
Okay.
All right, well then, with that story in, then that means it must be time for the 2-Byte News. What? All right, Heather, what is our first story in the 2-Byte News?
Alrighty. Bicycle airbags.
Of course.
Yeah. Not on the bicycle itself.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
In the U.S., 1% of the people, ride around on bikes. Now, this is actually happening in the Netherlands, where, they have 1 in 18% of the population, but 26% of the population rides bike. So a little over a quarter of the people do.
Okay. So they're a little more serious over there about it. Probably because their gas prices are ridiculous.
Yeah. But so there's so many people, there's worries about, cars hitting bicycles.
Sure.
So this Dutch company is working on a car airbags that deploy outside the vehicle. So they kind of, on impact, they pop up from under the hood and cover parts of the windshield to kind of cushion the driver or the biker.
Right. So like as he's flying over the hood of my car and is about to land on my windshield, the car somehow detects the impact and determines that's a biker and not like a street pole, and then deploys airbags.
Yeah, and it deploys those airbags to cover part of the windshield and kind of the sides, just to kind of course, it's not going to keep them from injury, but it's going to decrease the injury.
That's interesting. I'm watching, you've included a few videos in the show notes.
Yeah.
I'm watching a demo of it. It doesn't really seem to provide a lot. It's more like, well, maybe he doesn't shatter his shoulder as much.
Yeah. Well, they actually saw the dummies in the collection had fewer and less severe injuries.
Okay.
By up to 45% of the time.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you're going to, instead of hitting against metal and glass, you're hitting against an airbag. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, your brain is useful. And when it hits the windshield, maybe you only want a concussion.
Right. Instead of losing your brain. Huh.
Yeah. Concussions are nice in the overhaul. In the overall view of being hit by a car.
So when you were reading about this, did you see anything in there about what kind of technology it's using to determine that it needs to deploy those airbags? Like, how does the car know?
I'm not quite sure. My guess would be some sort of accelerometers or,
obviously,
similar.
Like sensors probably in the bumper too, right?
Yeah, similar to the ones that we have on the car. Maybe it's so that there's different levels.
Huh.
So maybe, striking a car has a large value, and that pops your normal airbag out so you don't headbutt the steering wheel. But if there's a smaller, maybe it hits the bike. I don't know. It seems like that would be odd. Like someone would be mad and come up and kick your car.
Right, or you maybe like you're parallel parking and you bump the guy in front of you as you're pulling in, right?
Yeah. But with a quarter of the population riding bikes, then car to car would probably be less of an issue than it is here. There's obviously a much higher percentage of bikers. So they might take it into consideration that it would be worth playing it safe.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure. I don't think it really went into the how. It was just I saw this and thought, huh.
Well, and if you think about it, might as well. I mean, what's the worst? So maybe once or twice it accidentally goes off, but if they have a good warranty or something like that, that's not too big of a deal. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious to see if we actually see that. That was the cars they were demoing on were Volvos, I think. Go figure.
Yeah.
Volvo's got a rep for that. But there you go. Heather has a link to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. 5 videos in the show notes.
Yeah, they have one large sort of promo video about the whole thing, and I put a whole bunch of clips to kind of go specifically to various
That's what it is. I see.
various spots, and I left out some of the parts of the hits without the airbags in case you really don't want to see that. Some of them were, some of them weren't. I mean, obviously it's a dummy, so it's nothing crazy, but
that's the
I
best
still
part.
wanted to let people be able to skip that part.
You
This
know,
is the meat and potatoes part of the video.
Not just for bikers too. I wonder if
Pedestrians.
pedestrians, or I wonder if it just helps protect your windshield, because windshields are expensive.
You're running into a pedestrian or a bicycle. What is Chris worried about?
Or a deer.
Or a deer. And what is Chris worried about? His windshield.
Or a mailbox. Maybe because what the worst thing is if you go to run over a mailbox and you break off the mailbox and it flies up and breaks your windshield. Nobody wants that to happen.
Yeah, but that's beyond the point. The first thing you brought up was if you hit somebody, so the biker comes along, you get hit, you hit him, and you're like, man, you better replace my windshield.
Well, if he was, assuming he was in an okay mood. I mean, if he was a little cranky from the whole accident thing, I might, try to just reach out through his insurance company or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I ran into somebody on my bike once at school, and they got up to be all mad, and I hobble up because I twisted my knee. They look at me like, oh, I'm not so mad anymore.
Yeah, you've paid a price.
You've paid your price. I'm like, thanks.
So I heard there was a little rumors brewing on the Twitter.
Yes. They went through and they were analyzing the data from the Twitter rumors from the Higgs-Boson. Way back. And they started looking at the dynamics of social media. And it's not just that. It's looking at it as a whole.
I love this. So all the different conspiracy theories or predictions people have been making, they sort of did an analysis of those.
Yeah, specifically about the Higgs-Boson. They went through and they picked out all the people. They started seeing, when did the rumors start? And so they actually started around the 1st of July. It actually came out on the 4th. So you can watch the video, and there's kind of, sprinkling here or there. And then on the July 2nd, I believe, there was the U.S. sort of, the Tevatron made some announcement, there's something big coming on, one day before. And so the rumor started even a day before that, and 3 days before the actual announcement. And then when the announcement happens, you can definitely tell in the video what happens. There's sprinkles, and I watched it, and they got to the second. I'm like, oh, there it is, because you have a whole bunch of blue.
Right.
And then it kind of fades down. And then suddenly the whole map is just clumped with all these Twitter feeds.
Yeah, and everybody had a Large Hadron Collider joke.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody had one. LHC, black holes, time travel, bird dropped crumbs, that kind of. Everybody had something.
Yeah. But it wasn't just, they weren't just looking at how fast did our rumor mill spread? It was actually looking at how information spreads on social media.
Huh.
It was the first really big science announcement that they've been able to track with Twitter like this.
Interesting.
So they're able to say, these countries were working on it. The U.S., a number of European countries had scientists working on it. So they're kind of seeing that it starts there. So the rumors started there and they started spreading. So it's kind of being able to look and say, all right, here's how things spread. Who, when they tweeted something, how fast did it spread from that one person? So they're kind of using it as even global marketing to say, all right, this 100 people on Twitter got 100,000 other people to talk about it. So it kind of gives them an idea of how to manipulate messages, how to make it go to a whole bunch of people, how to
take advantage of social media,
how to take advantage of it, how to keep the news about something going. So all these sort of things were included in it. But
oh man,
it was all
people are going to be mining. This is just the beginning. People are going to start figuring out how to work this thing.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, any type of media, they always go through and figure this out. I just thought it totally popped up on me that it was because it was all about the Higgs-Boson.
Yeah, which is cool.
And all the rumors as it started up, and then when the actual event happened, and then sort of as it petered off.
Very cool. And and you just see everything light up. All right, Heather, well, guess what? The SciByte 2000 tells me we have a spacecraft update. All right, just dialed it in here. What do we got?
Opportunity Rover. It's on Mars, and its big cousin, well, big grandkid, whatever you want to call it, Curiosity, maybe taking up a lot of the news, but Opportunity is still chugging along.
Wow, like ever now.
Yeah, 9 years of service. So it's starting up into its 10th year.
Wow.
And so, I mean, they were originally supposed to do a 3-month mission. You know, we've always heard about that. You know, Spirit went quiet in March of 2010, but Opportunity is really still chugging.
That's really
impressive. In fact, it's starting to get into, there's this whole distance traveled by rovers on any, you know, external body, the moon or Mars.
Okay, yeah.
And the person or the rover that traveled the farthest is the Soviet-era Lunokhod 2, which drove on the moon for about 23 miles. Next in line came the Apollo 17 moon rover, and they went for, 22.3 miles. But really close behind it is actually the Opportunity rover. It's gone just a little over 22 miles.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's not bad for that slow little guy.
Yeah, it's only a third of a mile shy of going farther than the Apollo 17 rover. Now, it kind of went, but the Apollo 17 rover was a dune buggy with a person driving on it. A Boone dune buggy.
Right.
So, yeah, you could drive around really fast and just go here and there, and it wasn't stopping for science for 6 weeks here or there.
Right.
So, it's pretty good for a remote control robot that you're using to do science every once in a while. Now, and what's cool is I was looking at all of the data over the last 9 years, saying how many miles has it driven for that year. Kind of looking at how many, what is mileage is essentially.
Yeah.
How many miles per year. And based upon that, I think that unless they make some stops, some long distance period stops for science or equipment, that in the next 2 months, it might overtake the distance traveled by the Apollo 17 rover.
Ooh.
And in fact, it may even become the furthest distance. It might overtake the Lunokhod, so be the item that's gone the farthest in the next 6 months. So my guess is this year, almost certainly, definitely, it will become the rover that have traveled the farthest that we've ever had. So it's coming up into those mile markers. Right now it's in 3rd place, but it's almost to 2nd place, and I think it's gonna hit 1st place later this year. So
the slowest little race ever.
Hey, the little rover that could.
No, totally. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, he's been 9 years old.
I don't mock.
How many times older than he should have been?
Slow and steady Opportunity, right?
Yes.
Slow and steady. Now we have a little incoming communications. All right, what do we got?
Last week we talked about dyscalculia. That is sort of the dyslexia of math in essence.
Yeah.
So that you're having a hard time doing math in a specific way.
Right.
They pop up 2 sets of 3 dots, and you count the dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of your brain seeing them in 2 clumps of 3.
Right.
So it's just a different way that they're saying the mind works. We had James Lewis actually wrote in saying he's kind of concerned that there was really an overdiagnosis of specific labels. That maybe it could be that you learn differently. He said, for example, himself, the way the teachers were teaching just wasn't working for him. I had that myself where, I felt bad, but I just showed up to class. And I wrote the things that the teacher wrote on the board just so I have them. And otherwise, I'd ignore the teacher. Then I'd go home and learn it. I'm like, okay, now I know. Like, the more I listened to the teacher, the more I got confused.
Yeah.
I had one professor who, was teaching me astronomy. Obviously, I have a slight passion for it. And she got frustrated because the way she taught, she was like, sending out radio waves in AM, and I was picking it up in FM.
I was just going to say, it's like an impedance mismatch, or it's like a different frequency kind of a thing.
Oh, it was a completely different frequency, and she just got frustrated.
Yeah, that happens.
And she, called me after school. She's like, all right, after class, she's like, all right, you know what? this is obviously not working. Let's figure something out. And by the way, I'm going to make sure that you don't have to take any other classes from me. We'll work something else out.
Oh.
No, like I worked with her fine doing research or, helping her out doing not in the classroom.
Yeah.
So she's like, you know what? This is going to be best for both of us. We'll figure it out. Because she was getting mad. She was grading me more harshly.
Oh.
Because she saw I wasn't enjoying class.
Yeah.
So
you learned differently than how she taught.
Yes. And is there more overdiagnosis of students in quote unquote the system? Yeah, I have family in schools. I was like 5th and 6th grade. A third of the student base was lining up in front of the nurse's office to take their Ritalin. So there's, in some degree, a overdiagnosis of things just because it's simple.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. They want to take, wanting to increase school grades. So maybe they take away recess to give more time in the classroom. But that actually decreases grades, especially for boys.
Right.
In elementary school, because they need to get out and run around.
Right.
If they don't have that, then they can't concentrate. So there are a lot of things going on that aren't just, diagnosing someone. Now,
the reality is that everybody's brain is different, and we come at a standardized approach to teach everyone with this methodology that just doesn't. It works for some, it works great for some, and it doesn't work for other people.
Yeah, when you're teaching a populace, you teach so that you catch 70, 80% of everyone. Now, if you're in the 20 to 30% of others, you're not quite as lucky. So in some ways, you have to learn how best you learn. There was a test that high school teacher gave. She's like, all right, answer these 20 questions, and it kind of gives you an idea of how you learn. Are you a visual learner? Are you auditory? Do you have to do things? I had, whenever my aunt and my grandmother were trying to go somewhere, my grandma, she couldn't look at a map. My aunt couldn't hear it. So one looked at the map and spoke about what was going on, and the other one heard it and was able to do something.
Yeah, my mom and I are completely unable to communicate with each other about directions to where, like if she's trying to find where I'm at, or if I'm trying to get to where she's at, or if I'm trying to tell her how to get to someplace, we do not communicate. Like, it's almost like we're not even speaking the same language.
Yeah.
It's really
so
weird.
there are obviously very different ways that everyone's brains work, and you learn very differently, and it's really is, if you're lucky enough to be able to, learn in the type of style that specific teacher is teaching, then awesome. But maybe you're better if you take all the notes and you go home and, you hammer it out. Or in college, I had a class where I was able to catch about half the stuff the teacher said. My friend was able to catch the other half. And then we'd have our study group together and we'd figure everything out. And then we split off and, we were essentially, our study groups and our notes were teaching 80% of the class. Everyone else was like, oh, now I get it. So there are so many different ways. Now, if you are supposed, quote unquote diagnosed, if you already have one, or you might end up getting one, then depends. If you're comfortable with that, then you're comfortable with that. Or if you're not, do what you can. But if you are and you're okay with that, then really look at what exemptions are you available to you. I had a brother who was dyslexic. Now, that meant that he had to be given a little extra time on essays.
Oh.
Or he was allowed to write up an essay in class and then take it home and type it out.
Oh.
And then bring it to school the next day.
Huh.
And, by the time he got to, older and he was an adult in college, then, maybe it wasn't pronounced as when he was younger. He'd learned to sort of deal with a lot of it, but it gave him that little bit of extra that kind of let him settle down. If you're not worried about that so much.
Right. It helps with the anxiety of it.
Yeah. If if you have this dyscalculia, quote unquote, diagnosis, does that make you available for a little extra time? Maybe then you can reduce that anxiety, to be able to sort of use it kind of as a passport to what you might be able to get or be available for. So you can kind of look at it that way a little bit. But yeah, don't necessarily say that's the end all be all. I had, somebody come back from some sort of meeting in high school and be like, oh man, I just got diagnosed with ADD. I was like, what? They're like, here. It was like a list of 10 things. They're like, you need 4 of these to be ADD. And I was like, 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
The only thing that I had shy of being a perfect 10 out of 10 was the fact that I could sit down and read for more than 30 minutes at a time.
Right.
I was like, oh, that doesn't necessarily mean that I need, Ritalin. Maybe it means that I have a harder time focusing on one thing at a time. Remember when we talked about multitasking?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things going on, but wandering about his subject, I don't want to miss it. But yeah, don't overthink the fact that everyone has a quote unquote diagnosis or everyone has a quote unquote label. So
right, yeah.
A lot of the time they're just doing that to say you're not in 80% that normal, streamlined teaching is going for.
Right.
So that means, does it give them an excuse to say, oh, of course you're not doing this for everybody else. You have this label. Or maybe it the best case scenario, maybe it allows you to have, an excuse or an exemption or sort of a ticket into a different way of doing things. So
yeah,
kind of just see where it goes.
There you go. All right. Well, if you want to email the show, you can do that. SciByte@jupiterbroadcasting.com or hit that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. Or you can tweet Heather, JB_Mars_base. Now, Heather, Why don't you put your science spacesuit on? Let's go over to Mars for a Curiosity update.
Lift off of the Atlas V with Curiosity.
Touchdown confirmed. We're safe on Mars.
That's it right there. That's the wheel. All right. So what do we got in the Curiosity update?
Alrighty. We have had nighttime imaging now.
I was just going to say, we need some nighttime images.
Yeah, it's the first time that we've ever taken pictures of things at night where it's lit up. They've actually seen...
Party time.
It's sunset, so they could see the moons or anything.
Yeah.
But the hand lens imager actually has, this tool, 7-foot-long arm, but it has some LEDs, white LEDs on it.
Ah, like its own little flash.
Yeah, so it has a little flashlight that they can shine. And it's actually able to... they're able to take 1.3 inches by 1 inch, so a little section, light it up really well. And they also have ultraviolet LEDs on there. So you can see it in white light and then ultraviolet light.
Huh.
And sort of, that'll give you an idea where they're fluorescent minerals. So if there's something green or yellow or orange or red, that all means more clear-cut indications of fluorescence and kind of gives them an idea of something is there, about what kind of rock or something is there. Maybe you get a better idea of, oh, that's a really funny spot. Let's go over there and look at that a little bit better.
Yeah.
So they're able to take this, close-up images of this rock right in front of the front left wheel tire. And actually, they'd gone over and kind of scuffed it with not necessarily the shoe, but the wheel. So they kind of rolled over it a little bit to break up the rock, to kind of expose some of the fresh material, dust it off, essentially, kind of break off and open a little bit, and drove back and kind of went in and took the pictures of so it was a clean piece of rock that they didn't necessarily brush off. But, so yeah, and then the ultraviolet light you really need to take at night.
Yeah.
So they're able to take these images. So look at it with the white light, then see what it is in the fluorescent light, give them a better idea of what's going on, and, oh, this is the kind of these specific materials that maybe fluoresce green. They look like this in the daytime. So maybe give them a better idea of, oh, that's an interesting spot. Wait, don't pass that up too fast. It looks kind of blah during the day, but...
It's like when they take a black light to a crime scene and you see all the splatters. Only this time it's rocks, and it's not a black light. Yeah,
there's no murders on Mars yet.
Not yet. However, if Curiosity finds like a murder scene, that'd be pretty big news. Pretty big.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty big news.
Yeah.
Pretty big. All right. Well, any other thoughts on that one?
No, I don't think so.
Now, you have a little note in here for this week.
Yes, I do. this Friday, February the 1st, is NASA's official Day of Remembrance. The three major tragedies in NASA's history happen pretty much within a week of each other by the calendar year.
Right.
Apollo 1 was on January 27th, 1967. The Challenger space shuttle was on January 28th, 1986. And Columbia, February 1st, 2003. So every February 1st, they kind of clump everything together and say, all right, this is our day to sort of remember everyone who's been lost in the line of space duty, essentially, of we're going through the process of exploring the universe, and these are the people who have,
taken the risk and
taken the risk,
paid with their life,
paid with their paid the price of the exploration. So it's kind of a day that kind of stop and think about everything that's come before, and then so it's not necessarily 3 different days of sadness all in a week. You can kind of stop and think about everyone on the specific days, but then there is more ceremonious activities just on one day.
Very good. All right, Heather. Why don't we jump in the time machine? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, close the door. Here we go.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. I like these sub 100-year trips. See, this feels about right. It's not too jostling. It's just 40 years ago, February 1st, 1972. Something big happened this week in science. What was it?
Yeah. Yes, all students are happy. The handheld calculator, the first scientific handheld calculator, was introduced by Hewlett-Packard.
Yeah, for the cheap price of 395 bones.
Yep. So HP 35, it had 35 keys. It could do logarithmic, trigonometric. Wow, I cannot speak today. Logarithmic, trigonometric.
Oh, no, I can't do it.
Oh, no, it's okay. But it had all those functions with just, one keystroke.
Okay.
Red LED display could give you scientific notation up to 10 digits.
Oh, yeah, that red LED display was cool.
Yeah, so eventually it came down to, $195. But, so, within 3 years, 300,000 units had been sold, even at the hefty price in 1972.
Yeah. Well, that was a pretty cool little device, and the computing power you could fit in your hand was impressive.
Yes. Now, if nobody has used a Hewlett-Packard calculator, it's actually different than your normal calculator that you pick up at the grocery or most people use.
Yeah.
It's a reverse Polish notation, which essentially is you don't need parentheses or an equal key.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm trying to remember exactly how to use it. I've used it a couple times. So it's like 6 plus 3 enter. You use an enter that actually ends up being equal. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that you actually use the parentheses or don't use parentheses. So the people who use it say it is actually much faster. In calculator competitions where you're going for speed, they always say those are the best.
Of course. And I tried one. So, okay, magically, totally non-obvious. I'm a slight nerd. And I actually did calculator competitions. Okay.
When I was younger.
Okay. I'm not going to judge.
Okay, you totally judge. That's fine. But I don't care. So I had 1 year I used one of those. Another one I used just the standard. And I was more comfortable with the standard because I've been using it longer. So for me, it was easier. But more importantly, they actually started coming out, which makes a lot of us happy.
I don't have anything to say after that. That's calculator competitions. They sound kind of intense in some way. So, all right. Should we retune the SciByte 2000 here? Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. Let's look up into the sky this week.
Alrighty. On February the 1st, that's Friday, at twilight, look to the star Spica will be to the right of the moon, and Saturn will be a bit farther away to the upper left of the moon. So when you look at the moon, there'll be 2 bright objects. Saturn will be to the upper left because it has the little rings, so it's flying higher, and Spica will be to the right of the moon. And on rolling into Sunday, February the 3rd at twilight, now both Spica and Saturn are to the right of the moon. So Friday, it's easy because Saturn is high and to the left. And then rolling into Sunday, now they're both to the right of the moon. So it makes it a little bit harder. But in general, Venus this week, about 20 minutes before sunrise, is going to rise in the southeast, Although each day as we go further into the week and month and year, it's going to be getting lower and lower each morning as sunrise hits. On Mars front, look to the fading sunset low in the south to southwest. Now there's going to be another red object in that area. It's a Fomalhaut. It is a red, I believe, a red giant star, but it's far to its left. So if you happen to see two, then Mars is on the right because it's the right planet. Okay.
Right, that's right.
That's right. And our favorite Jupiter around here. Because I think Jupiter's pretty cool too.
That's right. It's not just the internet's best broadcasting network. It's also a planet.
It is. So look, after sunset this week, it'll be high in the southeast sky. It'd be pretty much the first, quote unquote star you see over there. And the orange star, Aldebaran, will be to its lower left. So it'll be an orange object over there. But remember, it's not Mars. It is just an orange star, Aldebaran. And to the upper right is Pleiades. So it'll be a little fuzzball of stars hooked together.
A little fuzzball in the sky.
They're so close together, they kind of look a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Especially for those of us with not super vision.
Right.
Yeah. But
okay.
Saturn, we talked about earlier, about 1 a.m., is going to be to the east-southeast, moving to the high southern skies by dawn. So me, I am grumpy at 1 a.m., but by the time dawn rolls around, I would still be grumpy, but then I could look high in the southern skies and see it.
That's cool. That's a little perk.
Yeah.
Not quite like a cup of coffee, but probably about as strong as a cup of coffee as you want.
Yeah, but if you're up at dawn, then there's a couple of objects to see in the sky and maybe make the day slightly less evil. You're starting off at sunrise, you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah. There's a
stuff in the
planet out
sky.
there. There's a planet out there. It has
now
rings.
I feel slightly happier.
Yeah, I like that. All right, Heather. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the show, doesn't it?
I think so.
Holy smokes, what a great show. Now, folks, don't forget everything Heather talked about is linked in detail with extra notes in the show notes. Just go over to Jupiter Broadcasting, look for SciByte 79, and then scroll down from the video, and you'll find links also to the download page and the RSS feeds and all that stuff. And also, don't forget SciByte's live on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv. And don't forget you can follow Heather on Twitter, jb_Mars_base. All right, Heather, well, thanks for the great show.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of SciByte. We'll see you right back here next week.